This week on RSBANDB Update, there's something for everybody with the Accidental Anachronia skilling stations. We talk about how this update provides a new ecosystem for skillers, and we dig further into the new Elder God arrows. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 881, recorded Thursday, May 5th, 2022. Eggsperimenting with arrows. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of RSBANDB Update. This week is going to be an episode of the podcast where we might set some records. I know we set a record in pre-show here, but I'll get to that in just a moment. Tanis, welcome back. You're here as you are each and every week.
Thank you, Shane.
Also, Thaxi is here to go over some math relating to arrows and skilling hot off of our most recent micro lesson.
We didn't expect to be here this week.
No.
We thought this was coming. We expected to get that thing and have a few weeks. Like, oh yeah, they gave us Aya this week. They're probably going to take a couple weeks off. No. They're straight hot off the presses with some spicy new content. But yeah, I didn't expect to be here
spicy
this week.
in many ways, of course. If you're joining us for the first time, I am Shane12088. You can find me there in game. Tanis can be found at Tanis79, and Thaxi is Thaxi, Thaxy, as you can probably guess from that. We've been here a long time. We're discussing each and every update that comes out, and our whole goal this week, I think, is to just provide a bit of a I don't want to say a reality check on the skilling side of this, but definitely on the combat side of it as well, because these new arrows we got this week are going to be potentially meta shifting in some cases. I think
we're putting new numbers. We're looking at numbers for a lot of the stuff tonight.
Yeah.
We're looking at XP rates for the skillers. We're looking at damage rates for the DPSers,
and exactly that on the skilling side as well. There's going to be questions about what you're going to do for firemaking and fletching after this. So if you want to hear about those XP rates, come to the right place. If you want to hear about the arrows again in a little bit more detail, you've come to the right place as well. This is, of course, the accidental. I just laughed when I saw this. The accidental fletching and firemaking update on Anachronia with Granny Potterington. We were wondering how they were going to do accidental fletching and firemaking, but lo and behold, here we are. The blog post for this came out on Friday after we'd published everything from last week's show. We learned we were getting the skilling update, the May skilling update that showed a Zygomite last week. We didn't know exactly what it would be, but lo and behold, here we are. Tanis, early opinions?
I'm pretty pleased, and it's about time we've gotten a quality skilling update, especially a quality skilling update that has its own economy and ecosystem, and those are the best. It has a good mix between AFK and sweaty. I really don't know how much more we could ask for. I mean, it's not the perfect update, but it's a really good update.
There's also a boatload of puns with it. Every part of the skilling update has puns.
The mods to examine texts are back, or somebody in the spirit of mods is doing the examine text.
Well, on the stream they said Mod Stu and Mod A worked very closely on all this together, and it was kind of like a merging of their two minds, and they're very very similar in that regard.
If you haven't examined the broken ship parts around the Zygomite Salon, please do so. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Just well done. It's just so well done.
Yeah.
It feels very RuneScape. I mean, the amount of potty humor from the name Accident in the title to this, just the whole lot of it.
The Bograta Rexes.
They're sneaking it in there.
And for anybody,
it feels very RuneScape.
For anybody wondering, bog is slang for toilet in England.
I'm going to go to the bog That was definitely an Australian accent. I'm not going to do that again. Excellent. Good stuff. Clapping just to wreck with
I
the
didn't know
audience
that.
for Shane.
I thought it was like a privy or something.
Ooh, I'm sure
Didn't know it was
that too.
a bog.
I've heard of it being called the loo and such.
Oh yeah, the loo. That's right.
I mean, we're all North American based here, and that was one thing when I was there for the week and a half, I had no idea what the hell was going on with all the slang that I heard there. Do we have that kind of slang here? I don't know.
Oh, we definitely do.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We say a lot of things that they look at us with a raised eyebrow for, which is entirely fair.
So the first update, or sorry, the first part of this update is called Seggregation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Seg with emphasis on the egg. Seggregation. This is your 87 Firemaking skilling spot. Relatively low intensity. I'm sorry, I'm trying to just keep it together here, so you guys can tell.
It's the medium. This is the medium intensity option.
Okay.
It's not click once every 2 minutes. It's definitely you got to be moving, and it does reward you if you've got some okay time surges, but it's very clean surge and bladed dive paths. It's, they don't make it hard for you. They're very much, run to one thing, run to the pile, run to the other thing, run to the pile.
Yeah.
Very straightforward.
You basically take from the pile of dinosaur eggs, put the good ones in the incubator, and put the bad ones in the incinerator.
Mm-hmm.
And which, of course, raises many moral questions, as they highlighted on the stream, if you're incinerating eggs and such.
I mean, Granny's evil. We knew that.
Yeah.
So, it's fine. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Bad eggs. No bad eggs here.
That entire character's become the personification of Maud Raven, I bet.
It really has. It's so good.
Yeah.
But you also get pretty heavy dinosaur egg drops from this.
Yes,
multiple per hour. So the Iron Men are really benefiting from that. I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot else to say other than they've made those available and more than just Aya, and that's going to be really nice for Iron Men.
This and Aya has made
Yeah.
the prices of dinosaur eggs that might have been relatively uncommon before just hit the floor. So for anybody looking to create or complete those player-owned farm breeding logs, this is the time to do it.
Well, and they also made the sub-breeds available for purchase. Before you couldn't purchase the sub-breeds, only the base breeds. And so it took me 3 or 4 months just to get the dino breeding log of like daily checks. So I'm over the moon for anybody who's working on a trim grind. It's a great update for them. It's a great update for the Iron Men as well. So I've seen a lot of happy Iron Men the last few days.
Yeah. I think another thing I want to talk about here before we get too far into this is that the onboarding for this activity, fabulous. Grade A, 100%. How did you find it, Tavis?
From
the accessibility angle.
Reminiscent of archaeology.
Yeah.
And I was like, nice. They've definitely learned, and
there's their own little tutorial in it.
They did a 2-parter on this one. Firstly, it's great onboarding. It is. And the puns are there, and it leads you from one section to the next, and it teaches you the whole thing. It doesn't work super well if you don't have all the levels for it. If you come here with Fletching in the low 90s, high 80s, and Firemaking in the low 80s, you can only do the Zygomite station, so you have to skip the first two. So that does put a damper on things somewhat.
True.
But the tutorial is great. It plays well. The rewards are, it's a whole bundle of rune score. And I'm here to say that I think they very carefully calculated the number of rune score that they gave to these tutorials, because the maximum total rune score at time of recording is exactly 30,000. They have just unlocked the dragon armor skin for the achievement pet, the literal handful of people that have all achievements done. So I think they were looking to pull that out of this too. So that's cool.
And, when I was at this point of going through the tutorial and the onboarding and such, I was thinking, is this going to be a case study in how you do a RuneScape skilling update because it had the onboarding, it had the achievements, it has the XP rates, it has something that skillers can use to gain XP, or they can sell the components to make money. It's basically got that entire spectrum of choice that we talked about of what made things like the mining and smithing rework so great, which Tanis is intimately familiar with at this point.
And every one of those sellable objects, except for the completed arrows, is sellable as a skilling item. Selling arrow shafts will be used for fletching. Selling arrow tips will be used for firemaking. They will be. Selling the shafts might be used to make bowstrings, which will then be sold for more money. Spinning those does give you fletching XP, not crafting XP, by the way. We're not going to go into huge detail.
We'll get there.
Well, I see this as the evolution of
skilling
methods. Well, if you think about like what archaeology did for a new skill, and how it kind of defines what we think of as the ideal new skill, I think this does for skilling methods, just for the sheer completeness of it. It's one of those things where if you look at early iPhones, right? Every iPhone was a little bit better. It was a little bit iterated on, and now we're to a point where it's all been brought together into this complete package.
Like,
and thinking about how long it's been since we had our last skilling update.
Yeah, you're
right?
doing some number crunching on that.
Well, David and I were talking about this earlier in the week, and we scrolled back through the list of updates. And Heads Oasis is nice, but it's not endgame XP raise, right? Like, that is very clearly a mid-level designed thing. So looking at just the end game, where people spend so much of their time, like that didn't change any method people were using. You could make an argument for construction contracts, which were 18 months ago, as being the last truly new method to gain XP
and those
that somebody could potentially use. Yeah, from a strictly GP per XP perspective, not XP per hour, for construction. And we haven't had anything that could be considered GP per XP or XP per hour wise best in slot. We've had new versions of things. We've had new hotspots, like archaeology has had new dig sites. We haven't really had a new skilling method endgame in years, literally years. So,
and you've had updates that had pieces of it, but this is like
totally contained.
Yeah, it's a complete deal. Whereas when you look at the construction contracts, it really only kind of looked at one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it made construction reasonable and cheaper. And so but this, I mean, I don't want to say like there's no flaws, although I haven't found them.
I have.
I know, Daxie, but what I'm saying is like I'm just happy. I
get it, Tanis.
Like,
the numbers are all good. They're all usable. Right?
Yeah.
They've either made things more AFK or more XP or more GP. Every aspect of this, every step of the process is usable and something that somebody could feasibly want to do for a reason.
Yeah.
They gave a reason to do every one of these steps, and it's so cool. They did such a great job with the balancing on this.
I don't want to get to a point yet where we're giving the conclusion of this away, but from the fletching angle, the only thing I feel that is missing from a so-called fletching rework at this time would be a masterwork-esque kind of bow or set of armor.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
maybe that's how they're going to drop.
Yeah,
10,000 Elder Logs need to get fletched with a component that drops from the new Samurai dungeon to make them. Who knows?
and even the little tiny quality of life, like the stackable bowstring. Come on.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. I know.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, I don't know, man. It's an onion, and I'm
those
down
are the
with
least
it.
useful part of this to me, but we'll talk about it.
Well,
so let's get into
I'm
those
just saying,
XP
quality
rates.
of life wise, like that's something that could.
Oh, yeah, the XP per hour on actually stringing bows has gone way up, which will increase the number of those in the market because people need to buy them for invention components. Like that again.
Right.
They did good balancing on this, but let's talk about the numbers and actually dive into it before we get I want to get into the weeds.
We're selling the praises. All right,
we like it.
So segregation is our main case study here right now, and it feels weird saying that every time we say that.
Egg sorting. It's egg sorting.
When you do your egg sorting, let's just call it that. It's a little bit less objectionable on the mind. When you do that, you get Firemaking XP. Or sorry, you get sharp shell shards. God damn it, that's hard to say. I've never said that. I've never said that in person yet.
You could have. No, never mind. I'm not going to do it.
Okay. You can use those sharp shell shards for either tipping your Dyne Arrows or just getting raw Firemaking XP. And did we decide Dyne Arrow or...
Dyne Arrow is the official name of the unimbued item that you create from these skilling stations, and it fine.
Okay.
I don't love it, but it's fine.
All right. And like we said, all of those components are able to be sold. You can sell the shell shards, or you can burn them up for Firemaking XP and ignite them. And if you wanted to do such a thing, and we'll summarize all these numbers again after the fact, if you were harvesting your own eggs to use the tips, you would get 312,000 XP per hour. That would jump up to 390,000 XP per hour thereabouts if you're harvesting and then burning the tips. Or if you just are made of money and you want to go to the GE, you could probably potentially be looking at 415k XP per hour if you just bought or burned those shards.
Tick Perfect burning these is 415k per hour, and it is every interface that you do burns 60 of them, which takes 5 ticks apiece. So they are once every 3 minutes. You click the keybind you have them bound to and your spacebar, and then you walk away for 3 minutes, or you watch your Netflix. This is the most AFK Firemaking because it does not involve a bank. It is stackable, and the rates on these.
Slightly better than Corrupt Magic, right?
Slightly better than Corrupt Magic with... So there's two things to consider here, right? First, the Corrupt Magic can use a portable brazier, but Corrupt Magic adding to a bonfire takes 6 ticks instead of 5. And so you're balancing those two things against each other. And when it comes down to it, these give, I want to say like 20 or 30 more base XP. And so these are actually slightly faster per hour, I believe, than Corrupt Magic logs. So... obviously, using the pitch can to light a log from your inventory, if you have perfect mouse control, if you're like old school levels of like inventory management and clicking, is going to still be fastest experience. But this is going to be better than the current AFK methods, and it's more AFK. And like we said, if you wanted to harvest and burn your own, it's 390,000 experience an hour. You don't lose a whole lot, and it's still up there matching the other things. My expectation, given that it is a very similar XP rate, but slightly more AFK, is that these will be slightly more expensive than Corrupt Magic logs apiece. So 400 gold apiece, which means that selling them is worth a good amount of money too if you wanted to just make Firemaking XP by harvesting them and then also collecting the dinosaur eggs. So again, they've done a good job of like making it still good XP, but you can balance the amount of XP and GP you spend by doing these. And again, if you decide to burn them, they're still not overly expensive, assuming that's what they end up at their price point, sitting, 1 or 2 GP per XP. It's really solid. So
they also will be looking at making the Orthan Furnace Core and Augmented Tinderboxes work with the Firemaking XP angles of this.
That's the other thing, is that you can't use these with perks right now. Can you imagine if your Pyromaniac could activate and you just had a stack of 5,000 of these? Like, they have to, like, when it activates, it burns 28 of them.
There'd have to be a limit on that.
Probably 15 is the balance.
Yeah. And you can kind of see why they didn't do that on that. But,
I hope they make that work, because that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
That is currently the thing holding it back, to be honest, is that you don't get invention experience.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're maxed invention, do you really need to...
Well, having your perks activate is still nice, and the Earthen Furnace Core is, of course, getting those fire spirits. Yeah. Like, burning logs and getting Furnace Core spirits, the Forge Phoenixes, does give you a little bit of money and Onyx Deuced and some other things, so...
Yeah. Another thing that can come from the egg sorting, the pile of dinosaur eggs, is something called the Strange Egg, which apparently has an obscenely high rate, and they're not saying what it's for. It apparently
I hope it's like Mod
with,
Days' homework.
It might be, because they say it pairs with another item that was added in with War's Retreat from the live stream.
Oh. Huh.
And apparently nobody has figured it out yet.
All right. Well, keep us informed. That's interesting. I hadn't heard about it.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
After that, we're going to move on to the Zygomite Carestyling. That one's a little bit easier to say.
Yeah.
Requires 82 firemaking or fletching. They say you use your faithful fletching knife or tinderbox to save the day, giving the Zygomites a haircut. And when you give the Zygomites a haircut, you're given firemaking or fletching XP. You get to choose which, or you can get a combination of both if you want to go this way.
Yeah.
You guys like giving Zygomites haircuts this week?
I've been doing it a lot. The problem with it, of course, is that it is I'm going to say it is the lowest. It's lower firemaking XP per hour than Seggregation. It is obviously more AFK. You click once every 2 minutes. But same thing with the fletching, right? It's more AFK than your other fletching experience, but the issue with this is that the fletching XP per hour on this is about 230, 235k XP per hour at a maximum rate. And, that's base XP. So obviously that's multiplied by your outfits and your wise perks and everything else. So, like, all of the numbers we're saying tonight are base XP. We should clarify that in advance. But the fletching XP, compared with, like, broad arrow making, which is like 600,000, it's bad. It's not competitive. And the thing that makes it competitive is if you wanted to be fully AFK and you wanted to spend no money, right? The broad arrows are also, or rune arrows are in that like 4 or 5 GP per XP, which again, use them with BXP or DXP and it gets fairly cheaper, but this is not only free, but will give you arrow shafts. And because it is the worst XP option, I think those arrow shafts will possibly be some of the most expensive parts of the arrows. It's also fully AFK. Can't say that enough.
Yeah. We also have to talk what else you can use the tempered shafts for.
Yeah.
You can use it on a spinning wheel and get stackable bowstring. I know you, Tanis, were saying that you could imagine the possibilities with that.
Well, I just think it's a nice quality of life addition. And the thing that makes this, well, like Daxie said, the real thing that makes this viable is you're making money, right? Yeah,
right.
It's lower XP,
right.
but that is what kind of we expect now with the with the triangle that they try to
GP, XP, AFKable, yeah.
And like someone like me that's mostly been playing mobile lately, mostly like doing gathering, skills.
This is going to be perfect for you.
Good. Yeah.
Plus, it gave us Zygomite eggs, which, sure, nice. So the firemaking XP per hour is 290k, which we were saying that if you're just harvesting eggs for the tips, that's 312k. If you're burning everything, that's 4. So again, it's not as much, but it's good. It's still good for firemaking. It's for the fletching, it's kind of rough. I'm not going to lie to you. You've got probably more efficient ways to do fletching.
I also have to say, sorry to interrupt you, but I also just have to say I love the way they made the Zygomites queue for their haircuts.
Yeah, and all the examine text from there, that's my favorite area for the examine text. The other thing to note with this, too, is that we should clarify that it takes 5 fungal shafts to make a single bowstring. It's not a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
And that the rate that you obtain those fungal shafts, that means that you're making, plus the time to process them, you're only making about 1,200 bowstrings an hour. Those bowstrings are going to have to be fairly expensive for it to be worth selling 5 shafts and that much extra time. Yeah.
So what's the use case for this? Because the highest bow we have is the magic, or the Elder Shield, right? But I don't know that anybody makes those. So what's the use case for fletching bows in this day and age on the skilling side?
The use case for fletching bows is that bows are worth money. Both shield bows give you components for weapon gizmos and equipment siphons, and short bows give you equipment for precise components for perks and honed and precise perks,
right?
As well as components for those equipment siphons. So bows are the cheapest, especially magic bows are the best options for those typically for many players. So there's a need for that, and so that's where the problem, of course, is that everybody gets a ton of unstrung bows, which don't give those components. So this is giving people an option to string those bows for good XP, that you don't have to click the bank every 12 seconds to reload an inventory, right? It saves you some extra space when you're making those. Bows are currently positive GP per XP. I don't know if that's still going to be true with these. It just seems like an odd item to me. I mean, I'm making a use case for it, but the truth of the matter is that you get better XP per hour tipping bolts and arrows, or at least arrows, and you get you get better GP per hour just stringing them with normal strings, because normal strings drop from stuff. So the use case for who actually uses these is I don't know.
This is but you gotta look at it this way. This is a pure convenience item.
Yep.
You're not going to do it for XP. You're not going to do it for money. This is pure convenience, so that you don't have to piss around. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it. You take it there.
I was just going to say that, like, this, I could see Iron Men using this because they don't need to have those shafts necessarily to resell. They're only going to be using them for themselves, and this can make their fletching a lot easier because they don't have access to the same things that we do when it comes to
there's a couple of bosses that drop them, that are low-level bosses that drop very large numbers of bowstrings. I believe one of the Dagonoth Kings. But yeah, if you're looking for AFK,
our favorite adventure, temple trekking.
Yes, temple trekking. Which Iron Men already love. But yeah, so this is an AFK-able source of bowstrings that they don't have to go and spin flax, right? Like, this is, you got a stack of arrow shafts, you got a stack of things. There's no running to the bank to make your bowstrings. So I would understand Iron Men who don't have access to those bowstring drops to be using these, and I understand why. So I mean, that's fair. I think that is the weakest part of this update, and we're still finding uses for it.
Yeah.
Woo!
And
which is like why I started out saying this is a quality of life.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And let's also just not forget that some of the best parts of this is the examined text around the Zygomites as well. So
it's just fun. It's just a whole fun thing.
If you must buy a wig, it's best to pay for quality.
To pay. Haha. Haha. It's best to pay for quality. Haha. Haha. Yeah,
and
it's good stuff.
And on the crash boat, it's their own fault for barging in.
Yeah, they should not have allowed Gothics to take the wheel, in hindsight. Again, the examine texts are good. We don't need to read them all out.
No, I'm not going to.
Go look, and just everything you can right-click, see if it has an examine. A lot of the stuff does, and a lot of it, the scenery does, and it's funny.
All right. So I'll just summarize those rates again. Firemaking here is 290, Fletching 230. If you combine the two, it's 115k Fletching XP and 150k Firemaking XP, unboosted, of course.
Right. And I will do, just so people have an idea of kind of where that falls, I should have said this earlier, but I did do math earlier today on magic logs, and a portable brazier is about 350k before perks, so 370, whatever it is. Which means that, again, burning those shell shards is the new best in slot firemaking XP. And then for fletching, you're looking approaching 700,000 experience per hour for fletching broad arrows and bolts. That's what my equivalent in terms of reasonably priced options is.
Right. So they didn't touch the broads because I think people still like those. So that
you're not supposed to do that, Shane.
You don't touch the broads?
Yeah, you're not supposed to touch the broads.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful with that, especially in this day and age.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Time for Eggsperimentation. 95 firemaking required for this one.
Mental high five, tennis.
So you grab a collection of dinosaurs here and you effectively feed them their favorite food. And then after this, you get what's called Potterington Blend number 102 fertilizer.
It's a rocket fuel joke.
Yes.
Rocket arrows.
Which you then burn to make the dinosaur, quote unquote, propellant.
Yeah.
So this one is going to be very interesting because this is the most movement intensive method that we have.
There's a lot that goes into optimizing this. When I first did it, when I first was there, I had 10 inventory spaces. This definitely rewards you for having as many free inventory spaces as possible because you can hold as many of these dinos. And then the way that I was seeing people do this, and the way that I was doing is you can just effectively run laps. And when I was first starting, I got 27 or 28 dinos, and I did them all until they were full. I did 3 full laps. But the problem with that is that by the time you finish your second lap, or even your first lap sometimes, a couple of your dinosaurs are already finished. And what I started doing later, which did speed up my propellant per hour, is...
you could say propelled it forward?
It certainly did. Was that you can burn your propellant once per lap as you run past the barn and just pick up a new round of dinosaurs. So you just have a rolling, revolving door of dinosaurs, I guess. And that sped up what I was doing because you have the maximum number of dinosaurs being fed at each trough effectively out of your inventory. And then, of course, this is one of those things that this area is incredibly convoluted. So we talked about the Seggregation area being nice, easy, clean, direct surge paths. Everything's directly north-south. It's all nice and clean. There's nothing that gets in the way of a bladed dive. These are the opposite of that. These are very messy surge paths. They are, if you surge a take off in almost any of these surge lines, you'll surge into a wall.
Or a plant.
But there's a couple of spaces you can surge across a wall to even save you time, so you get more distance out of your surges or your bladed dives. And so this is one of those that the longer you spend here, the faster the XP will get. And was seeing people do some pretty insane movement around this place. When I was using no surges at all whatsoever, extrapolated out to an hour, I would have gained 420,000 blaze. Lol, haha, it's a firemaking joke. XP per hour. So 420 if no surges, no nothing. Anywho,
that was about a week and a half ago.
And Kieran from some of the people on the skilling side of things, these are folks that Tanis knows and is
Brew and Company and Jingles who have been on the show before.
Yeah, very, very competent skillers who have that, they have that perfect movement, and they are going for that optimization, are able to hit about 2.5 times that. They're going through 1,000 of these baby dinosaurs per hour, which is you spend half your time in a trough and half your time moving between troughs, is what that means. And so those people are going to be hitting up to 1 million XP per hour. I think for the average casual player that's coming here to earn a few mil XP to kind of round out a 99, if you're trying to do the surges and bladed dives and stuff, I think you could probably clear 600 to 700k pretty easily. That's what my estimate is going to be on this in terms of the moderate. There's no AFK in this one. This is the only thing in this entire thing that is not click and wait.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the best firemaking XP. So
but
there you go.
This is, we're looking like twice or more the current best in slot firemaking XP. That's burning elder logs with a pitch can by hand. This is pretty good.
And this is new for skilling, really. I mean, yes, we've had some of this with Anachronia agility, but this is the first time that skilling has depended this much on movement abilities for the XP rate.
I would make an argument for summoning if you're not training at pickup sticks. If you're actually using the Amlod summoning area because you have a limited number of charms or something, it uses a similar thing where you have to be pretty precise with your bladed dives and surges and can get a lot out of it. But yeah, there's not a lot of stuff that is this much kind of make yourself go to hotspots repeatedly.
No, because when you think about it, the best we've had for purposeful active gameplay. I'm not talking about the way we had Hunter
not
at one
Croesus
time.
or anything. Not big game. Right. Yep. I hear you.
The best we had was basically whack-a-mole with deep sea fishing, right? That was what we equate active skilling.
In terms of viable skilling XP methods, yeah.
The ones that they meant to do, right? That's the ones they meant to do. All the other ones we kind of came up with.
You've got like Charm Sprites are another one, right? There's a few that are like the accuracy of your clicking and the timing of your movement matters. But yeah, this is among a small cohort of currently viable best in slot XP methods. And Whack-A-Mole at Deep Sea Fishing is an excellent example. I hated that. I got like 1,000 or whatever it was for the achievement. I never went back because when I'm skilling, I want AFK, dog. That's the deal.
Hey, we could also throw the alligators in there from Oasis.
I guess. Yeah, that's true. That's that kind of Whack-A-Mole stuff too. But again, that's not end game viable XP.
True.
That's
I was going to say,
true.
that's active gameplay for mid-level XP.
Which is cool. Love that. But
yeah,
I mean, there's also, again, money rewards, whatever you want to talk about. But
also, if I can just throw where I come into this on, you get the dinosaur propellant, right? And you combine that with your shaft to make the tipless arrows, right? But you can also
tipless shafts. Damn.
Tipless shafts, yeah. Then you can also use the same propellant to make ultra compost. It'll be 50 propellant in place of 1 dragon manure that you would normally make.
Oh, it's 50 to 1. So I didn't actually take it to a compost. Yep. That seems. I was like, wow, iron ultra compost so fast from these.
50 to
50 to 1.
So 50 to 1 sounds fair. I'll allow that. That's 2 dinosaurs worth. For these people that are doing 1,000 dinosaurs an hour, they're
it doesn't kill dragon manure and dragons with the regular perk. I just need to be 100% clear.
It augments it. It will definitely lower the price. But yeah. The other thing that is nice is that you can bring a stack of it on your farm runs. So your farm runs can now become manure runs. Because it's just 1 extra inventory spot, which is really nice. But
let's talk about the new Dine Arrows then. Requires level 95 fletching. They'll require the tempered fungal shaft plus dinosaur propellant to make a headless Dine Arrow. Making the headless arrows is going to net you about 45k XP per hour, I think we said.
Yes, and it is 1 XP per shaft, 15 XP. They come in 15 bunches, so it is 1 XP per headless arrow created. So this is purely processing. This is just for profit. This is somebody that wants to buy the 2 components and sell them on the GE to make profit. That will net you money.
And you're going to be needing a lot of those. Let me tell you that.
Well, and the nice thing about it is that you can tell from that rate, you can make up to 45,000 of these per hour. So
a ton.
We'll be making a lot of them, and we'll be using a lot of them. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Now, to make the Dine Arrows, you take your headless Dine Arrow and add one of the sharp shell shards from Seggregation to it, and in total, this will give you about 600k XP an hour if you're tick perfect.
I hate it when I shard out shells.
I know, me
Such
too.
A bummer.
Me too.
600k XP per hour, 20 XP per arrow. That is 33% better straight up than tipping broad arrows. Now we need to double check. I need to double check the wiki rate. Shane and I did a check today, and I found this, and Shane double checked me that tipping these arrows is a 3-tick process, not a 2-tick process. So the wiki currently has it listed as a 2-tick process. And I'm going to pull up broad arrows just to double check, because I believe they are actually 2-tick. Yeah. So that might make this worse. I don't know if it's intended to be 2-tick, but when you make 20 batches of these, it takes 36 seconds. That's 3 ticks per batch, which is still in that same 600k to 700k per hour range that you get with your broad arrows. So it's not bad. And I did confirm that doing these with a portable fletching station, you do not get extra arrow shafts if you feather quote unquote. If you propellant the shafts at a fletching station, you don't get extra shafts, but you do get extra completed Dine Arrows if you tip them at a fletching station.
Interesting.
And the fletching cape also does work. So worth noting that it is definitely worth you making these at a portable fletcher.
And just for comparison's sake, if it was 2-tick, we'd be looking at 24 seconds for the 20, right?
Correct. You would be looking at 24 seconds
Yeah.
for the 20, and it would be you'd be looking at 900k XP per hour, which would be best in slot Fletching XP. Like, they are tier 95 arrows, so maybe they should be best in slot. Maybe that was the intent. But as it stands in the game, you make a set of 20 sets of these, and the timer on the clock says 36 seconds. So time will tell if that gets patched or if that is intentional and it's just equivalent, which is fine either way.
Yeah.
At either rate, it's good Fletching experience, and it'll be worth some amount of money.
I mean, I hate to bring this up again, but you actually can make money with this versus the broad arrows are a straight sink, right?
Well, I mean, that's true. The broad arrows cannot be sold afterwards. That is why they are 6 GB per XP, because that's the buy price and the sell price. It's all from stores. It's fairly cut and dry. You can get it a little bit cheaper than that if you buy right after DXPs, those kind of things. But this is, these arrows will be in demand, and the people who are trying to use them will not want to
spend their time doing
themselves.
Yep.
With that said, making the arrows is a fast process. It is, again, 45,000 arrows an hour to create those. The problem is it is 9 ticks. So currently it is 5 ticks to go from the 3 components to a completed dyne arrow. It is 9 additional ticks to charge 15 god arrows. You add an incredible amount of time, and I'll say the rate. It's 244,000 XP per hour at tick perfect inventory management to charge Elder God arrows. So the Fletching XP is bad, and that will probably be a large portion of the actual money making from this. I expect that tipping the arrows might be break even, or it might be a loss. Like, it may be the case that headless dyne arrows plus tips sell for 6 GB per XP more than regular dyne arrows. Dyne arrows might actually just be cheap as sin. Because the thing that will make people money, because nobody's going to be buying those dyne arrows unless they're charging them, and nobody's going to be charging them for XP. It's not a viable XP method at end game. You'll make chip XP off of it. You will hit 200 mil eventually. It's one of those, it's like fishing sharks used to be, right? For fishing, it's terribly inefficient, but you make a ton of money if you charge Elder God arrows for Fletching XP. That's what, at the end of the day, when people are looking at the value of the arrows, that's what I'm expecting to happen. Is that charging will be the money, and making the dyne arrows will be GP per XP.
I think you're 100% right on that, because we also have
third leg of the stool.
There you go. Yeah.
Say again?
It's the third leg of the stool.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's your money, your GP, and your XP rates. Yeah, absolutely. So,
and it's 3 anima to charge 1 arrow.
Currently.
Yeah. Asterisk.
We'll get to that too. We've got some comments from JMods this week that say that something will be changing, and we don't know if it is that number or some other numbers. And we'll talk through what that post is when we get there.
Anyways, summing this all up, Seggregation, 312k XP per hour if you're harvesting for tips, 390k if you're harvesting and burning, and about 415k if you buy or burn, or just burn the shell tips. Zygomite Carestyling, 290k Firemaking XP per hour, 230k Fletching. If you combine the two, 115k Fletching and 150k Firemaking for Eggsperimentation. It's a fun word to say. If you're just playing relatively simply, 420k probably, you said, based on your tests. An average player will land somewhere in the 600 to 700k ballpark, and just over 1 million XP per hour if you're tick perfect, optimized on your paths and everything to that effect. Making headless dyne arrows, 45k XP per hour. The dyne arrows themselves, 600k, and charging the Elder God arrows, 244k XP per hour. And
once again,
all that up, there's your 3-legged stool again.
Yeah. Once again, important to note for the people looking at these numbers, these are unboosted. There's no outfits, there's no pulse scores, there's no BXP, DXP, there's nothing applied to these. These are base rates. Every number we've quoted tonight is base rates. Unless something, has like the portable brazier, in which case we've made that with the comparison, right? All of this is base rates. This is what you get. So add in all of your boosts on top of this.
And I think overall, you wind up in a situation where you brought out an entire update that is confined to a relatively small portion of the world, but has its entire economy sorted out with it.
Yeah. It's also a relatively high quest burden and skill burden to unlock it.
That's true. Everything here requires extinction. We didn't say that at the beginning.
Yeah. And so that's, if nothing else, that's, you need to be this is high-level content for high-level, balanced account players. Take it or leave it, that's what we got. So
no level 3 skill pairs allowed.
Yeah. Sorry, Shane's alt. Rip. But yeah, I mean, it's intended for endgame players who have completed a large portion of the game, and it's a great quest reward. Like, as a quest reward goes, this is a valuable. This is that quest is now being done by more people. Straight up.
But don't worry, PB quest scrubs. They're all tradable.
Yep. And we're coming to that.
We're coming to that next. Give us your money.
And Tannis, you said, what if they would have told us about this when Extinction dropped, that the next big update was going to be a high-level skilling update? How would that have made the reward land?
It would have made.
Well, they did tell us that.
That was the problem,
right? Give it to us.
This is what people expected when they said skilling reward at the end of that quest. We didn't expect the D&D. Not to take anything away from the D&D, but
no, we can take things away from the D&D.
Hot tub.
Well, D&D and skilling method.
But we were, right? Because this is what we were expecting. So now that this is here, I'm just gonna. In my mind, it's part of the reward.
Tannis is a little more pleased.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think it definitely makes up for it. There's supposed to be a new, something new. Like, those are the best quest rewards, a new area, a new skilling method. And this was supposed to be the skilling method. And it is. Finally, we have it.
It's good stuff. They've done good work on it. We cannot, it deserves a lot of praise. They've done very well.
Indeed, they have. All right. I'm going to thank some Patreon supporters, because without you guys, this episode and more wouldn't be possible, including the breaking of Tannis's brain, but I'll talk about that in just a wee bit here. This week in particular, I'd like to thank Alaska, Amos Reed, Andrew C., Arounds, Arvids L., Big Huge Rat, Bryflex, Kristen S., Chunk the Monk, Diana, Duramax, Elo Matey, Plaza Man, Free Milk, Gila Floor, Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Jeebus, Jesse W., Jim M., Ling01, Malinoric, Mohan V., Nate the Great, Nick G., OTR Gamer, Patty the Architect, Pernasius, Ricky A., Rippeth, Samuel FL, Skiotan, Scott DS, Seth W., Stub Eve, Tanner JW, Taylor B., The Naked Captain, Tim A., Tom V., and Zant. Thank you, everybody, for making everything we do here possible. I have just closed work on the $200 Patreon reward. It looks wonderful. Woo! That will be in the mail this month. I can guarantee that. So for everybody who has their shipping info on Patreon, you will get that. And if you want access to our monthly bits, or you just want to say thank you, you can do that for as little as $1 a month. You'll get a special mention in the show notes, early access to those, and access to that entire back catalog of monthly bits, including the monthly bit we just put out today regarding Legacy Combat, where Tannis's brain got broken.
Yeah. Hey, on the bright side, I learned something, and it works with my mobile game style.
There you go. Yeah. Did you give it a try yet?
No, I haven't, but I've decided that literally is probably going to be how I do combat. It sounds too good not to. No, it really does. Like, why not?
David's a wizard, and that's as much of a teaser as I'm willing to give for it.
Yeah.
David's a wizard.
Oh my god. That's just so weird hearing you say that, because you came in not knowing what to think and whether or not it was okay, but here we are after this. It's going to be my main method of combat, accessibility-wise, where it works.
Yeah.
And we underscore all the caveats and what they mean on the bit and what you need, etc. for that. So it's not as though it completely replaces EOC, but it's a good discussion.
For all the folks who were looking this week for when we release content in our micro lessons and all that, and looking for more details, those bits include all the details. That's where we go and do deep dives and math on stuff. And so, yeah, David's done a really good job, I think, with this week on this one. So I'm excited for people to see it.
Yeah. He was the perfect person for that one. So.
Yeah. Yep.
We also do have a VIP tier where you'll get a special VIP rank on Discord and access to a Patreon-only chat channel mentioned on the podcast at the start of the month, and high-quality stereo versions of the show, plus everything else in the $1 tier. And if you want to give the ultimate gift for $5 a month, you'll receive a shout-out on the podcast each and every week and gain exclusive access to the outtakes that we use for the clip show, which there are going to be many of this week. I already know that.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, thank you to our Patreon members for making everything we do here possible. You provided us for a fun week with that monthly bit and all the content that you have inspired us to create with us. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
And with that, we're going to talk about the Elder Arrows. But before we do that, we're going to run the micro lesson for folks who might not have heard it yet. A microlesson is a short and to-the-point video that teaches you about a single concept in RuneScape. This time, one of our combat and PVM experts, Thaxi, who's a teacher on the Raid FC staff, is going to teach us about the different types of arrows in RuneScape, specifically the new dyed arrows.
This microlesson will cover some information for all skill levels, including which arrows to camp and which could or should be used as switches. To start off with, and for comparison's sake, commonly used criminal bolts give about 12,000 to 60,000 damage per minute increase depending on the type of bolt used. Obviously, Hydrix are the adrenaline source for Rangers, and losing those is a big hit to our options for both damage and utility. That's important to state up front, because this lesson will focus primarily on the damage aspect of the comparison. You will probably use about 50 to 80 anima arrows per minute in combat, so I expect them to be fairly expensive. We'll start with Joss arrows. These give 30% damage and 20% hit chance increase against demons or dragons. I don't know if I need to tell you this, but these are wicked strong. A high-end range rotation with base ammo should easily clear 200,000 damage a minute, if not much more. So right off the bat, these are doing 60,000 plus damage, easily competing with Hydrix Ruby swapping. We'll be using these everywhere they apply, like ED2 or the upcoming Zamorak-themed dungeon. Second on our list are Wen arrows. These give a stacking buff each time you hit a target with a non-bleed basic ability, up to 15 stacks, and using any threshold or ultimate consumes those stacks to give a damage buff. For each stack consumed, the duration of the buff increases by 1 tick, and the strength increases by 2% for thresholds and 3% for ultimates, meaning these will cause you to do more damage than Joss arrows for a brief period of time. It's worth noting that Deadshot's bleed continues to benefit from this effect, even after the arrow expires, meaning Deadshot should clear 20,000 average damage when used with these. I think these have the potential to be amazing, but they're definitely challenging to use, since they heavily limit when you can push out big damage. My current thought on these is that you should switch to them in your ultimate rotation after your first round of thresholds. Then you can spec and use basics to get them stacked before firing off several thresholds and a Deadshot in succession to take advantage of the buff from the arrows. Next up are full arrows. These give plus 15% damage, but minus 10% accuracy. For the endgame folks, I expect these will show up as a switch for use with hard-hitting thresholds and special attacks during ultimates. From a more casual perspective, I expect these to be more expensive and less powerful than the criminal bolts, and weaker in a sustained rotation than some other arrow options. These will probably be a decent option for players with 99 range who have a decimation or nox bow, but who don't have a crossbow option to use with criminals. They may also be a good option for Slayer, where enemies generally have lower armor values and don't survive long enough for the player to benefit from arrow effects that need to stack. Last of the new options are Bic arrows. Each arrow that hits the target applies a stack that gives 2% extra damage to any poison damage taken, up to 400% at max stacks. The stacks fall off after 30 seconds. I've seen a lot of theory crafting about how we could make these good. because the effects sound so strong. They would make your poison hit well over 100,000 damage a minute with the right setup. But the fact of the matter is that stacking these takes so long and costs so much in terms of the other ammo that you could use that by the time these are stacked, the net DPS gain probably isn't in the positive. If I'm wrong about that, these could potentially see some use for Solak, Hard Mode Carapac, or at high-end rages against the Arc Glacier. From our old quiver, we have the Blackstone arrows. Each arrow that hits the target applies a stack, which reduces the target's defense by 0.75%, up to a maximum of 15%. The debuff lasts longer than the typical kill time for any boss in the game, and can be a decent alternative to having a meleeer use the Statius Warhammer special for bosses like Solak, AOD, or the Mazcab raids. Stacking them can be done in under 10 seconds with greater ricochet. Just stack the Blackstone arrows at the start of your kill, then switch to a DPS arrow. Moving on to other arrow options. We talked pretty extensively about the Croesus arrows last fall, and you can find the nibbles of those explanations from the podcast linked in the description. The short version is that both Croesus arrows are incredibly strong. Splintering arrows apply a buff to you when you use the Greater Dazing Shot ability that causes all of your non-bleed damage splats to apply a stack of puncture and refresh the uptime on the puncture bleed. Splintering arrows make Salt the Wound a very strong threshold option with a low cooldown, and offer about 45,000 damage per minute altogether when camped on a poisonable target. They can also be stacked in advance to just take advantage of having a 13-stack puncture running, which will offer heavy damage on top of whatever other ammo you're using, as long as you continue to apply Greater Dazing Shot or Salt the Wound. Once fully stacked, you no longer consume arrows, making these relatively affordable to camp for targets with larger health pools and no invulnerability mechanics. Our last entrant are the Despore arrows. Despore arrows apply a stack to you every time they crit. At 5 stacks, your next adrenaline costing ability becomes free, and you cannot gain stacks for 60 seconds. Each crit during this cooldown period decreases the cooldown by 1.8 seconds. I generally use these as a switch with a Grimoire to time having a free ultimate so that I can start the high damage portion of my ultimate immediately. For comparison, Hydrix bolts will give you an average of about 130% adrenaline per minute when camped, so 100% adrenaline for a switch you use outside of your ultimate is a pretty strong option. As always, these micro-lessons are intentionally brief. There's quite a bit that goes into deciding which ammo you should be using, and you'll need to make that decision for your individual situation. Let us know whether you plan on using any of the new arrows, or if you think we've missed anything in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave it a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe.
Tanis, any questions?
No.
All right.
That was pretty informative to me.
All right. Thaxi, anything you want to expand on?
I mean, so many things, Shane.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we've had a lot of comments on that lesson about how it was intentionally brief. And clearly there's more to talk about with a lot of these. And I hinted at it that, like, there's a lot of theory crafting to do about both the Bic and Wen arrows. And I'm going to encourage everyone to go out and do their own math. I'll do a little bit on air today for some of these, but if you don't like my conclusions, go out and do the math yourself, and then you can't disagree with your own numbers.
Wait a minute. I thought facts don't care about your feelings. Isn't that right, Shane? Someone said that.
Sure.
Well. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm not going to touch on the old arrows. Like I said in the micro lesson,
they've been done to death.
Yeah, if you want to hear details on those, there are I know there's nibbles on those out there.
Yeah. And just for the record, I'll just say this: using splintering at somewhere like Carapac, where the stacks make sense, I can meet or exceed the times that I get with my bolts.
Yeah, and you don't do, sweaty Hydrix Ruby switching, those kind of things. You camp a bolt. So, I mean, that absolutely lines up. Hydrix Ruby switching prior to these arrows release was absolutely the best option. If you could do it tick perfectly, I stand by that 60,000 damage per minute number. If you have questions about how I reached that, I did do the math in the comments on the micro lesson. So I'm just gonna stand by that, and we're gonna move on for now. But
so which arrow would you like to start with, Bic or Wen?
I'm going to start with the Bic because I think they've got the most to talk about with them. So,
all right.
let's talk through some math really quick with these, right? Because I've heard a lot of people saying that they're amazing, right? Evil Lucario put out a piece earlier this week, and he has an opinion that I do have to respect quite a bit because he knows what he's talking about. He's done this math. He has people around him who have done it. Noting as I'm going through this that I have looked at all of the discussion on the PVME. I glanced at Reddit and laughed at the rage. Because you all know how they feel about switches. And I've had some conversations with a number of high-end PVMers that are in various circles with me, both through the Raid FC and through the podcast and other places. And I'll tell you what the math says on this. And people I've talked to have generally agreed that it sounds about accurate to where these are going to be used, except for the BIC where we're still trying to figure it out, right? So here's the math behind the BIC arrows. The base poison damage you can expect from a range rotation without a Blood Reaver is about 13,000. That's on the high end. That's if you're doing about 100 hit splats per minute on your target. Unlike arrow effects, poison hit splats can activate off of bleeds. They can activate off of all of your damage over time, all of your ultimate hits. Anytime you hit a hit splat on a target, you can activate poison. It's very important to note because it does increase, right? I say you can hit a target about 75 times a minute with range with Gricko. You can hit a little over 100 with bleeds included. So when you average out the poison damage, you expect about 13k from that. So with the BIC arrows fully stacked, that means that you're hitting about 65,000 poison damage a minute. That's 5 times 13, right? Plus 400%. What that means is that you get an extra 50,000 damage per minute from your ammo at that point. The thing to note is that once you have them fully stacked, you can use that in addition to another ammo. And so if you're doing Hydrix Ruby swapping and you swap for one hit back to these arrows, you could in theory get 110,000 damage without a Blood Reaver. Now, the thing to note with that is that what that requires is that you have hit your target 200 times. 200 hits to stack. And those stacks do only apply in that direct damage, that is non-damage over time things. And that's the 75 hits a minute with Greater Ricochet. Without Greater Ricochet, it's 50 hits a minute, which means 4 minutes to stack. So we're going to ignore that because they really don't have a use case there, I promise. At 200 hits to stack, with Gricko, to 75 hits a minute on a good strong rotation, you're looking at about 2 minutes and 40 seconds to fully stack these arrows. If we assume 60,000 damage a minute with Hydrix Ruby swapping, that means that you are losing 160,000 damage by choosing to use BIC arrows over just our best option with bolts, right? We're still working out what the exact damage numbers are going to be for these new arrows. Assuming that the thing isn't susceptible to Joss arrows, because then those are just going to be better. Like, right? One, your target has to be poisonable, which limits us to recent bosses for the most part. 2, you have to be able to hitting your target for 2 minutes and 40 seconds to fully stack these. And then once they're fully stacked, how long will it take you to recoup that 160,000 damage that you lost? And how much damage do you gain from the arrows while you're stacking them? There's 2 parts to that question. The part that we're going to worry about first is how much damage do you gain while stacking them, right? It should be half the total effect because you slowly gain the effect. You'll get half of it over the full time. You go from 0 to 100, right? Half is the median. You do that for the full time. So 2 minutes and 40 seconds of stacking these, you hit half the damage. So 25k, right? We're saying you gain 50,000 damage from these. You gain 25k DPM. So with that 160,000, 2.5 minutes, you need to do just under 100,000 damage with these after they're fully stacked, which means your target must be alive for 4 minutes and 40 seconds if you are the only person hitting it and you're the only one using these arrows. In a group situation where you've got multiple people hitting with poison, multiple people stacking these, that number goes up faster, right? And you can switch to your bolts earlier. But a single target boss needs to be alive for 5 minutes or more. What that means is you kind of are limited to like high-end rages at the Arc Glacier. You could potentially use them at Carapac, but they wouldn't be active for the 4th phase of hard mode, which really makes them not, you get some extra damage for phase 3, but you spent a lot of arrows to get there, and it's not there for the important part of the fight. So I'm going to say that's probably out. The interesting thing could be at Solak, right? You have 3 or 4 people stack these at the start of a kill, so they each spend 40 seconds, and you still lose that 160k total damage on your target, But because you stack them so fast, you have multiple people, as long as your kill takes that 2 minutes or a minute and a half afterwards, right, whatever it is, these become more viable. So places like, again, if you're doing 3-man hard mode Carapac and you're not just bursting it, this is going to be really good. If you use High Enraged Glacier, where he's got really high health with really high defenses, as long as you don't get back-to-back arms or back-to-back minions, which might be just kill resets anyways, these are probably going to be worthy because that kill is long enough. The other use case we came up with for these is, and this is the strangest thing, but it is Solak, because the important part of a Solak, literally a solo only, right? Solo Solak, the challenging part is the DPS at the last phase because you're racing against time. So you want to have big damage at the end. And so these will be fully stacked by then, right? And so for a person who's doing solo Solak who doesn't have a Fractured Staff or a Grimoire, these are going to be the way that they're able to clear the boss consistently, right? Looking at you, Ryan. Nobody else. And that's it. That's kind of where I think those could be used. The other thing to mention with these, obviously, is the Blood Reaver, which is going to be much shorter and much less math. The Blood Reaver allows your, every time you hit something, including with poison damage, it heals you. And every time you heal, it applies a hit splat to your target. Effectively, you double the number of hit splats you get just off of that. But because poison hit splats can also activate poison, it's recursive. It adds on top of itself slightly more. And so what you end up with is closer to about 2.5 times as many hits on your target. You can just barely break 300 hits per minute on a target, which more than doubles your poison damage, which does mean that if you're stacking these, you still need to be attacking a target for at least 2 minutes, and then you're only breaking even with other ammo. But with a Blood Reaver, you'll get a lot more benefit out of having these arrows active. And with a Blood Reaver active, my calculations are that you could, in theory, get up to 200,000 DPM just off your poison. That would make a Blood Reaver potentially better than a Ripper Demon with fully stacked Bic arrows. But again, the number of places where you can use this is pretty limited, right? The bosses we've talked about are kind of still the same pool. That's kind of all you've got. Maybe hard mode, Zuck. You should be able to use them there, but it's just one of those things like, do you really need them? Is the cost worth it, right? Because remember, when you're using these, it costs 200 per attempt to use them, so it's 400,000 gold per 2 or 3 minutes you use with these. They're going to be really expensive, I expect, especially at the current drop rates of Vic Anima. So, I mean, that's a lot of math, and the bottom line is that group content, they might be usable. End game things, they might be usable. They're going to be expensive. And it's very specific content, right? You can't use them at AOD. You can't use them at raids. Like a lot of the group bosses, they're just kind of out for it. You can't use them at Virago.
We need to underscore that there's still a lot of theory crafting and work in bringing that into the actual implementation, specifically around the Bic arrows, that has to be done.
It's one of those things that's kind of going to be a per team thing. Yeah. And the caveat to all of this is that Fractured Staff goes Burt. And that even with these, if you can manage to use them, they're absolutely best in slot. But they take a lot of effort to use. That is what it is. So we can move on from those.
Yeah,
that was my big math for the night.
I just want to add one thing on this, and it was interesting to me that he was already out there with this, is that Monsponge was already seeking community feedback on these arrows and such. And the thing that was consistent through this is that the Bic arrows can be really strong, but the 200 stack seems unreasonable at this point in terms of that. With that,
I think that they would see a lot more use if you had 50 stacks for an extra plus 100% damage, or even 100 stacks for an extra 200%, right? Currently, the effect is busted and broken. And what they allow you to do is they give you extra damage in the execute phase, in the end of a boss's life. That's where they're going to be strongest, is that once you get them stacked, you swap to a different ammo, you can burn. But getting them stacked is a big trade-off, right? All these things I'm talking about is it is 5 minutes to break even with these.
Yeah. Anything you want to add on the Wen arrows? We talked about them on the micro lesson, but any specific use cases, etc.?
I think it's worth mentioning. When arrows are going to be used almost anywhere, right? When arrows are the burst damage. They gave range a burst rotation option. When arrows are the like, I'm going to save my cooldowns and I'm going to drop all of them at once and I am going to just explode something. Because what you have to do with those is you have to stack them, right? So Greater Ricochet applies 7 stacks. So effectively you like spend 10 seconds to like Greater Ricochet, a couple other basics, maybe a special attack, and then another Greater Ricochet. And then you end that with full adrenaline. And then you fire off like 3 thresholds and Deadshot in that 9-second period. And you just like, you should be able to clear 40 to 50,000 damage in a 9-second period. Like, you should be like actually easily more than that even. Like, you should be moving with these.
And if you're not camping them, what would you swap them with? Full?
So I would never camp these. That's the other thing that I think I should say is that like they limit when you want to use your threshold, and your thresholds don't all have the same timer, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't all have the same cooldown. So if you have these on all the time, like they gain power because it's gone longer without you using them. You get a shorter time and a smaller damage buff if you use them early. So if you use the early, you're heavily punished. You're not getting the damage out of these arrows if you don't use them when they're fully stacked, which is going to be really hard if you camp them. So when you're not camping these, honestly, I would like any of your other damage arrows, right? If you could use Death Spores outside your ultimate with these, you could use regular arrows or splintering arrows and swap to full arrows when you have just 1 or 2 thresholds to fire off, and then you use these once in your ultimate rotation to get a big burst at the end of your ult. Right, I think that's how I would use these. Is that I think they are sadly a switch in that way only. And the full arrows are the same way, right? Just to move on, the full arrows are definitely like you want to equip these when you're going to do some high damage threshold. If you're using Elder Overloads and you're using a tier 4 accuracy aura or a Berserker aura, and you're using your tier 95 or 99 prayers, pretty much everybody should have 100% accuracy on all bosses. David and I did some math on this earlier in the week. I think at least 2 of those 3 things at highest level. Excuse me. And these should be usable everywhere, right? There's no place that has a high enough defense for these are not usable. Nex is a little bit sketchy. The Magister might be a little bit sketchy. Everywhere else, you're fine. And then obviously the Joss arrows do exactly what they say on the tin, and everywhere we can use these,
yeah, we're going to be getting our best case for that with ED4.
Yep. Very excited for that. And that's what I'm going to say is our use case for the arrows. And
as with always with like these things, they'll develop and grow over time as more discussion happens on them and people start experimenting about where you throw them with that regard. So, and I think based on what we've talked about here, I think the only ones that the community is probably going to be asked to have them look at is the Bic arrows, potentially. Yeah,
the Bic arrows, like they're okay.
Wonderful in theory.
Yeah, they're so cool, but they're just such a pain to use, and it's such a question of where and when they'll be good. The when arrows are a fun rotation option. They give us they increase range's burst options when range was typically a very steady output combat style. We didn't really have a lot of burst options before at all. The full arrows do a similar kind of thing where it's like if you want to be sweaty and have a switch, there's that, and the Joss arrows are situational. I almost, it's kind of like I saw somebody making comments about using the Joss arrows with a Hex Hunter bow, because if anything in Elite Dungeon 4 is a demon that uses a magic-based attack, those Joss arrows you'll be hit capping on basics. Like it's not funny. You're using a tier 97 plus 30% damage. Like you're going to shred things. So I'm really excited to try that. As a person who owns 2 Hex Hunter bows, I'm very excited to try that.
All right, sounds good. Tanis, you want to ask anything? Throw anything in?
No.
Okay. This is another little mini micro lesson in the show, I think.
Yeah.
You gotta understand, like, this doesn't fit with Legacy and my new combat style.
Interestingly, Tanis, you could. all of the things I'm talking, well, no, because the wind arrows don't work at all. The Joust arrows are going to be great for Legacy because it's just a passive buff. You could, and same with the Joust arrows, you just equip them. Well, no, because they don't work for specs, do they? Oh, no, I mean, you could use them if you were using a special attack on one, but honestly, yeah. I don't know. It's definitely, like, if people on mobile wanted to be sweaty, or if people on Legacy wanted to be sweaty, they could totally juice those arrows. They don't have, they can't juice a rotation or anything. These are things that you can change in Legacy.
Well, I guess you'll just have to listen to the bit so you can be convinced that magic is the proper style.
That's true. That is the problem. Legacy does kind of rely on Animate Dead, but you could have like your cape slot and your boots be magic Chank boots. I don't know.
Yeah. I want to talk about some stuff that Mod Stu addressed in terms of the balancing about this in the weekly TLDW Reddit thread regarding the live stream on this. So what was talked about in this was the balance concerns that players were bringing up. They're looking at it in kind of a plan ABC kind of way. The first one is to potentially buff anima rates specifically for Bic, and looking at adding when anima to the Glacier hard mode, because you don't currently get anima on Glacier hard mode, believe it or not. The plan B is to adjust the Elder God arrow creation anima cost. Currently it's 3. I don't know what they would do with that. And plan C is potentially to rebalance arrow component production consumption. And in terms of tackling A, B, and C in order, that's the way they'd like to go about this. What needs to be underscored throughout this entire thing is that this needs to be maintained as a viable skilling method for people taking part in the segregation and the experimentation and the hairstyling for this. So
if the anima becomes so expensive that the price of the arrows depends on the anima and the arrows are worthless, they've failed.
Yeah.
There needs to be anima floating around like candy, like there has been. And I will say I hope they don't make these changes too prematurely, because currently there is a lot of anima floating around, and there's a lot of merchants holding a lot of it. And so they'll kind of control the rates, but I will say that if they hint that they're going to do these things, maybe those merchants will start selling it, and I want to see what these settle at. I want to see what the cost of the arrows is, and how much of that comes from the anima. In a perfect world for me, all of the anima would be like 100 or so, a couple hundred maybe.
Yeah. And in my view, you got to
need to buff Vic anima, but
yeah, you got to watch the economy on this for about probably 3 to 4 weeks, and then after that, you can take your first actions. So based on that, we're probably looking at a month to, a month and a half out until we'll start to see things on this specifically related to this plan, unless there's any, outright data that says something needs to be done in the next couple of weeks.
What's the big arrow, maybe?
Yeah, I want to read Mod Stu's reply because it's actually really important here. So he says that plan A through C suggests that we're going to choose one of these approaches, then just do it, then call it a job done. But the aim is to tackle these phases in order, as they're closely interrelated issues that build upon each other. There's a lot of levers that can be pulled here, but if we go straight to pulling the demand levers, which means they have to overcorrect existing flaws in supply, which are worth addressing in and of themselves. And the reason that they're not going straight to reducing arrow consumption is that the arrows are another layer on top of a pre-established foundation of asynchronous supply. The amount of resonant anima Bic per hour supplied from Croesus is significantly lower than all the other Elder God Wars generals, and is likely to worsen more over time, given group content is a barrier of collaborative logistics, and the more shiny new content gets added to the game, the harder it'll be to get a group together. There's also quirks like that the Arch Glacier doesn't provide anima in hard mode, because at the time it wasn't a worthwhile drop, as there weren't any persistent uses for it. But by first stabilizing the imbalanced supply of resonant anima, which means buffs to specific resonant anima sources, yay, and letting that filter through the player-driven economy and getting data to make informed decisions about balancing a living trade beast, we then have a more stable foundation to tune the demand levers, like arrow consumption. So we're focusing on the supply of anima first. I think this is a very fair and smart way of looking at this without jumping up and down one way or the other and doing something rash. And plan A, B, C, like he said, very clearly says that, hey, we're going to choose one of these. But in reality, if A doesn't work, then they'll move to B and then C and so on and so forth.
I like this. And, the mods have been very clear in the past about they are in favor of incremental changes to balance. The concern I have is that I have never seen that in game. And part of it, I understand, because they have to QA every change they make.
Yeah.
And they do beautiful QA on this game, as much as we meme about it, compared to a lot of other games that, I crashed, and everybody's like, oh yeah, it happens. This is like a daily occurrence. And RuneScape is, if you crash, it is a big deal. They take it seriously and they try to address them. And figure out what's going on for the most part, right? Like the fact that hardcores exist and don't die die off like fruit flies, is a strong statement to that. But again, yeah, they tend to do relatively heavy-handed balance changes. And I'm hoping that, when they adjust these things, it's a carefully tuned lever, and I'm sure they'll think I'm sure they think very heavily about all of their balance changes.
Yeah, and he said it's going to be a data-driven approach, so that's already wonderful.
But I worry that we might just log in at some point and be like, oh, the arrows cost 1 now, 1 anima. And again, I want the anima to be the cheapest part, and so I wouldn't be terribly upset about that. But they could take a heavy-handed approach to this, and I hope that they follow what Stu wants to do here. That's what I'll say for this.
Yeah, well, he's principal lead for this one, or tech lead or feature lead. I don't remember what exactly they call it, but him and Mod Abe were behind this. So unless it became, truly out of the park, and the balancing team, Timbo,
the ninjas or somebody
would have to do that. But there is a certain amount of time that those folks are allowed to come back and circle back in.
That's the problem
on these updates.
It's limited time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Mod Shrike is gave us some news today that starting next Monday on Aya, the Lorehound will help get your story progress faster.
Thank goodness. I didn't know that it didn't before. Nobody actually knew, did we? But that's great. That's wonderful news. Yay!
Yeah. So we're about a month out from that, but
that makes sense. That's a good timeline, I'd say.
And I think what we have here is something that everybody needs to read Mod Stu's reply on the TLDW thread, because for anybody who is going into this discussion about arrows costing too much, or not being usable, or perhaps there not being enough demand for them, well, just read this and it highlights the approach that's going to be taken on this. So
I want to be very clear that at current design, a person with greater ricochet uses 5,000 or close to 5,000 arrows an hour.
Yep. And we didn't say that earlier, Tanis. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh no, yeah, I think we said that in pre-show. That I don't know that we did this math when we were talking through these. A person with greater ricochet uses about 5,000. A person without greater ricochet will use about 3,000. These are produced. You can make headless arrows. I did say this earlier, about 2,500 an hour. So, or maybe it is if you're. Anyways, they're used, if I remember correctly from the math that I did, you can create, I think it is with imbuing, you create a maximum of 2,500 per hour. That is gathering all the supplies from scratch. It is 1 hour's worth of work for our Ironman to make 2,500 arrows. So if that Ironman has greater ricochet, he is doing 2 hours of gathering per 1 hour of using arrows. These, at current, they will be expensive, right? You're using 5,000 arrows. If each of those arrows costs 1,000 coins, you're using 5 million coins an hour on this. That's we're not quite into Grimoire prices, but we're really approaching heavy Grimoire prices.
And this is an
expensive thing to use right now.
And at that point, you really have to consider where you're going to be using them in your PVM fun times.
Mm-hmm. This is speed kills them. They're super fun to play around with, but if they cost anything more than 1,000 GP, and they should. the skillers deserve to make that much money, right? Like that is $2.5 million an hour if they cost 1,000 each.
Like these are the special armaments that sit on the wall that you only bring out when you need to put everything on the table.
Right. There's specific content you use these at because that content makes you the money to be worth it. And so like I want to make that real clear that like currently the way that they're designed, I want these to be more than 1,000 apiece. I want the skillers to make more than 2.5 million. Yeah. That's not a lot of money. And so they're just being consumed too fast.
And sometimes
it's just not reasonable to use them for PvM.
And sometimes you just like to take the big gun out and play around with it.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes you just want to stab stuff with the pointy bits. And again, if you're just using them as switches, right? If you equip full arrows for just your snapshot and your dark bows or your Saren Godbow specs, like you're going to be using a fifth that amount, right? You'll use a million gold per hour worth of them, and that's great.
And then that's
great use.
What I asked you in pre-show, what arrow do you use instead as your main driver then?
I mean, heck, any of them. Splinter arrows, I think, are a good option because they stop being consumed once they hit max stacks, and they'll give you a reasonable damage buff and an extra threshold.
And they're actually cheap
which again,
now.
If you have fully stacked puncture, you hit 253% ability damage with Salt the Wound on average. In comparison, Snapshot is 265, so you're effectively getting an extra Snapshot, except that this has a 15-second cooldown instead of 20 seconds. And like it's an extra threshold to use. If you're using the Wen arrows, you can swap your splinters to the Wen arrows. And then your Wen arrows, you can get 30% extra damage on top of this already usable threshold. It's an extra threshold to use in the Wen rotation.
There you go.
So splinters are what I would say, as much as everybody's gonna like. I get so much pushback on the splintering arrows thing. I'm happy to talk about that too, but people look at my numbers and they just don't believe me. So anyways,
we beat that horse dead last year when they came out.
Go check the nibble on it
in the pre-craft, and even in the meta review when we had David here, and if he had a problem with that, he would have said something as well.
Yes,
so.
No, he agreed. He agreed with me that I'd done good math at that, and that it was just one of those things that there's just the high-end people are just using the staff, and that's totally reasonable, right? If the high-end people didn't have the staff, didn't have magic, they would be much more on the table, which is fine. Regardless, that's my hill to die on, and that's what I would say. That's what I would recommend.
Yep, and we're gonna have to have another meta review this year, I think.
Yeah, well, it did well last year, so why not?
Yeah. All right. With that being said, let us move on to the patch notes. Then, not too many this week. A new graphics option has been added that will show a default player model in crowded areas, and this will improve performance in highly populated areas. In this ultra setting. If you on Ultra, it will show all player models as normal. Patch mode doesn't specify this, but this is mobile only.
Oh, it's only in mobile?
Yeah.
Oh, I was really looking forward to hiding that guy. You know that guy. There's multiple of them, and I don't need to say their names because you know them. That guy that you don't want to see all of their particles. Yep. This person will hide them if you're standing in the GE next to them. There's at least one every few worlds. So thank you, but please make this available on PC.
Yeah, because I think it should be also on PC, just with the various levels of hardware that people play RS with.
I run a potato.
Yeah. You're also not able to. What was that, Tanis?
Is potato.
Yeah.
Is potato.
Yeah.
It's potato.
You're also not able to craft more vulnerability bombs after dropping any of the required items during the crafting process. What?
So this was like the exploit where people were making potions out of their Beast of Burdens. This is people that are dropping bomb or like starting to craft bombs and then picking up items so that they can continue to craft more of them.
Right, because the process was because things are certain things in that process are stackable. Right.
Yeah, you could manipulate the interface to allow you to craft more per. It was just a very small sweaty optimization for the scalers that it was definitely a glitch.
All right.
So they fixed it. Sorry, guys. Ooh.
Added the option to teleport to the surface entrance of Santistan on the Pontifex Shadow Ring, allowing for faster access to the quest instance. Yay, that's good.
Yeah, that was obnoxious. Good job.
Fixed an issue where leaving Santistan would show you the "You abandoned the siege engine" message. I saw that a few times. Sir Owen's armaments at the Glacier front are no longer beset by a terrible affliction.
I sent you a picture of this, Shane,
When?
a while back.
Okay.
Long ago. They had it was a poly issue that they were doing the stretching thing. They were some polys on them were stretching and being very, very spiky, like stabbing him through the head, and like there was one way out behind him. They had some screwy poly. His model was messed up.
All right. You can no longer teleport out of the Rise of the Six boss fight with malevolent energy in your inventory.
Thank you.
On mobile, the charge bar interface does not close at random while it's open. I don't know what the charge bar interface is.
What am I looking for? Yeah. Yeah.
In any case,
I
don't know. Fixed an issue causing dead taps in the area where the minimap was hidden so that it just wouldn't respond to it. And fixed an issue with the right action button setting when toggled on that would cause some interfaces to not update in real time or overlap with child windows.
Cool interface updates.
Yeah.
Just bug fixes. Good stuff.
Nice simple patch notes.
Yep.
Tannis, your favorite friend Vic is back.
Vic's back. Thank God.
Vic, hey. I don't know if I have anything for him this time. I've
been using
Well, and with
everything being prismatic,
augments,
it's not really a problem.
Yeah, it's not as big of a deal.
That's true. Cool.
Might be a good time for people to get skilling outfits nonetheless, if that's something you're after.
And remember your pulse cores.
That's
thunder
good.
cores.
I got too many
the
of those.
Blood will be coming.
Scaling out fits is a big one for me for my alt.
Yeah, for the ones that aren't craftable through invention. Though I think there are some that aren't even in Vic's store. Some of the newer ones, like the constructor's outfit.
There are 2 or 3 of them that cannot be found easily in game, like the Black Ibis outfit from Thieving that takes boatloads of Pyramid Plunder to get. I'm not doing that. I'm buying it. There's a couple like that are just I'm not doing.
He's in Berthorpe until May 16th. We also have
that one.
Go ahead, Tannis.
I was just saying I had the old Black Ibis before the exoskeleton.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. It was good. It was just obnoxious to obtain it. I mean, that was best in slot thieving training at the time, so it made sense. But now nobody does Pyramid Plunder. And Pyramid Plunder is obnoxious.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, true.
All right. The board game, RuneScape Kingdoms Shadow of Elvorg, is going to be launching on Kickstarter on May 31st. The campaign will be only live for 10 days. And with this, they also revealed another mini, and this time the mini is the Skiller, which I think is wearing a chef's hat with a pickaxe and a crafting robe, if that looks correct.
You know, that makes sense. That makes sense. Sure. That's fairly iconic.
Yeah, and they had to find people from Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, Steamforged on the live stream this week. As you can tell, we're kind of short for time, so we're not going to dive into that live stream. But if the game is something you're interested in, definitely go have a listen to that, or check out the Kickstarter campaign page that's already being linked for when it launches on the 31st of May. And with that, we have a couple of listener questions that we want to go through, and this is actually a good question here. So this first one's from Malinoric, who says, currently most of the time players spend learning PVM through Slayer and low-tier bosses, where ammo is barely an afterthought. But once you get to high-tier PVM, especially with abilities like Greater Ricochet and the Fractured Staff, ammo is consumed at almost an unsustainable rate, especially for Iron Men. So, do you think that the game would benefit from going back to a more normalized approach instead of the current proc-based system currently in-game? For example, having 1 ammo consumed per ability cast, regardless of proc.
I mean, to address that last point directly, I mean, the problem, of course, with that is that 1 arrow per proc is 15 times more bolts than we're currently using, generally speaking, or 7 times. But But going back to like where they dropped to the ground, or your Eva picked them up and they just got consumed a few per minute, right? There was a break rate, so you broke 30% of the ammo you fired, or if you had the high tier Eva, you broke 10% of the ammo you fired, rather than just whenever it activated, it got consumed. I think there could be merit to that. I like that idea.
Yeah, you just got to be mindful of the economy, like you said, on the bolt side.
Yeah, that's the issue, is that, bolts wouldn't change that much, right? Bolts are currently activated either 1 in 7 or 1 in 12 to 15, depending on the bolt. Bolts going to a 1 in 10, which would be what it is when you're wearing an Ava's or you have the Ava's effect active, wouldn't change much. For the new arrows and for like the old arrows too, you'd be using a lot more of the Croesus arrows probably, depending on your target, and you'd be using a lot less, much less, 90% less of the new arrows, which of course causes problems. I would like that. In a perfect world, if I could say like if I wanted it, I want it. Like I would like it to be not like more RP, right? Like not more realistic, but like I would like to be able to say, yeah, I've got, 500 arrows and that's going to last me an hour. Because I'm going to, they're going to get picked up by my Avas and that they break at a specific rate. I think that would be lovely. Like, and of course, the economy side of that says that isn't realistic, but I'd like it.
Tannis, what do you want from the skilling side?
What do I want from the skilling side?
Yeah, in terms of providing this kind of ammunition and such, based on what we've discussed here and your potential foray into legacy combat.
Well, I don't think it's not a problem for the skilling side, right? The more you're consuming, the better for us.
True.
And I would be leery of messing with that just because I don't know. Isn't that part of PVM is paying for your supplies and all that?
Yeah, and nobody has really complained until the fractured staff came around, and then these arrows came onto the scene, right? I don't remember anybody complaining about ammo costs before.
And there's a reason for that. Look at the price of soul runes over the past year, and just look at the graph go to the moon. And the same thing with these arrows is that before these arrows, like people complained about Hydrix bolts, and then they gave us a big drop source of Hydrix bolts. I don't expect that with these arrows. We might get some anima drops from the new dungeon. Maybe Zamorak's absorbed enough of it, and he's going to spit some out when we kill him or something. I don't know. But, and again, I don't want that to be the expensive part of these arrows. I want the production cost to be the expensive part of these arrows. So,
It's a hard question because I can see it from both sides now. But my conventional,
but we need to balance change.
Like my conventional wisdom says that everything was fine before the Staff of Armadyl came onto the scene. So,
well, maybe that's it. Maybe we just make the fractured staff, use a runes 1/8 of the time, right? Like
that's powerful.
It screws the rune crafting economy over. That's the same thing with these arrows. They could just make it so the arrows have a 30% chance to be consumed. Maybe they give the new bow, a passive like they gave the Blightbounds, where Blightbounds consume each Blightbound you wield reduces the consumption chance of bolts by 25%. So wearing a dual wielding Blightbound gives you use half as many bolts. Fun fact, if you didn't know that. Maybe they do the same thing with this bow, where it consumes half as many or a third as many arrows.
That'd be interesting.
The problem with it, and the problem with using it for Blightbound, is that it makes things cheaper for the people that already have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I dislike that fairly heavily.
Yeah, and at some point, you also have to say you're using this tier 95 staff. It's firing off all these auto attacks. Yeah. You're going to pay for it.
You don't have to spec. It could just be
exactly.
You're going to spec because you want that damage because it's fun. But yeah, So I mean, but people like you look around at a lot of bossing. I have seen a lot of people in I do a lot of raids. I've seen a lot of people in raids, and every once in a while I just see this tornado fly out of them. Like, what spell is that? Oh, that's right. It's air surge, or air, whatever the tier 90 plus air spell is. It's like they're on the normal spell book because that's what the correctly priced spell is for the content that they're doing, and I respect that. I can't tell them they're wrong because they're staff specking.
Could you imagine specking? Could you imagine specking
ton of tornadoes
with like something more expensive?
I mean, there are the end game folks who are doing end game content are absolutely specking with Insight Fear. They are spending. We talked about Grimoire money. They're spending Grimoire money on their spells for sure. So, maybe we shouldn't be freaking out about the arrows.
Yeah,
because some people will use them. I don't know.
Exactly. It's one of those things where you have to
use
say
them. They're fun.
Where you have to say wait and see. But this is a great question. Thank you, Eleanor.
Mm-hmm.
Next one is from Pop. What is the stance on hardware macros as part of a non-macro rotation? He says he asked this question at 2016 RuneFest and 2018. But the responses were evasive and non-answers were given while the problems have gotten worse in high-tier PVM. The official answer from Jagex on this, and I don't believe it's changed at all recently, is that if you have a mouse or a keyboard that you bind to set up so you press a button on your mouse and you make it say press Control F5, that's okay because that's one input for one output. But if you make that same mouse button press in sequence ASDF, that's not okay. And you can do this with hardware and software that comes with all the gaming mice and keyboards and whatnot. And this is actually allowed in other MMOs. It's not allowed in RuneScape, and this has been the policy. I think I last heard this policy stated about a month and a half ago, if I remember correctly, from some of the JMods. And that's where it's at. And if there's people getting around this and it's not getting caught, either those folks aren't getting reported for it or the systems built into the game can't detect it. But it's definitely against the rules. And so, that's a simple answer to that question.
My understanding, and I could be wrong about this, is that the systems can detect it. It's very easy to see if people are putting in the same inputs the same milliseconds apart.
But you can also randomize it in some pieces of software too.
Sure, but my understanding of it is that as of currently, people are using them. Those people are not being banned, but it is against the rules, and those people do not have a leg to stand on if they get a ban or a vacation because they're using it. That's my understanding. Is that they're not currently doing anything about it, but it is technically against the rules, and if they ban you for it, you have only yourself to blame.
Yeah. And I think this raises a bigger question and a discussion the community needs to have with EOC and what other MMOs do is should this kind of thing be allowed in RS? And I think that's a discussion the community needs to have, and Jagex needs to be forthright with it. What do you think, Tanis?
I've actually kind of come around to these. I wouldn't have a problem with this. Mainly because it would be helpful for someone like myself that would have more difficulty putting in multiple inputs like that. So this actually would help me out quite a bit when it came to, like if I wasn't just doing full, revolution, this could give me, I don't know what, like do a full manual. And then pop a,
And keep in mind that somebody who plays WoW comes to RS, brings their macros, and gets banned. What message does that send to them? If this isn't clear anymore.
Sucks.
I mean,
that's what they're thinking.
Nobody, you're not getting benefits out of macros in RuneScape until you hit endgame combat.
Yeah.
You need, it's one of those things that they're used for switches and those kind of things. And you're just not, if you reach endgame PVM in RuneScape by buying an account or I don't know how you do it without being in the game for long enough to have heard from somebody that it's against rules without reading them, I hate to say it's on you, but it might be on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
It's a little bit harsh, but it is what it is.
All right. Tanis, anything else on that? I think that's a fairly simple answer.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think it's definitely something that should be discussed, just like we heard that, hey, what if there's one day mods for RS, right?
Yep.
Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking about it. It's kind of in that same vein.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like plugins for RuneLite, It's
exactly
how you police it. So, yeah.
Yep. Okie dokes. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. We're going to move on to picks of the week right now, and this is a joint pick again by Tanis and myself. It feels like we were just here a while back, but we have another new Star Trek series starting this week. Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Captain Pike finally gets a TV show. We saw Captain Pike in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. Strange New Worlds takes place on Captain Pike's 5-year mission aboard the Enterprise. And this series brings the modern incarnations of Star Trek back to its episodic nature, which has been missing since Enterprise, because all the new shows, minus Lower Decks, have been heavily serialized, which a lot of people didn't feel with Star Trek, but it's turned out really well in the end, I think, at least. But this goes back to Story of the Week, Planet of the Week kind of Star Trek stories that was built on the original series and shows like Next Generation, and that premieres today on Paramount Plus in the US, CTV Sci-Fi here in Canada, and Europe will be getting it eventually, I think. But I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Tanis.
I mean, what can I say? It's Captain Pike. Shane kept telling me when I was watching Discovery, wait for Captain Pike, and yeah, he's cool. And I haven't heard this yet, but I'm kind of hoping that lately we've seen less of the ensemble kind of cast that made those classics, so good. I'm hoping that we'll see a little bit of that in this series.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people want, and I haven't watched the first episode yet, but the early reviews on this say that it's effectively like a modernized original series with updated visual effects so far, based on the first half of season that the reviewers saw.
Right, and I mean, people are gonna hate me or love me, hate me. I don't know, but like, Captain Pike is I can't do with Kirk, man. I can't do Kirk. Like, I can't. It's so hard watching the pausing and the overacting, and I can't.
They've had a series of good actors to portray Pike, because Pike was even a good character in the Kelvin movies of 2009 to 2016. And Anson Mount here is Pike in this incarnation as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they get up to. But with this episodic nature, we also get the more lighthearted things, because pretty much I think all the modern series have been some kind of galactic ending threat, haven't they, in each season so far?
Oh yeah.
So, but that's,
and I think it's been that way since going back to Enterprise, right? I mean,
no, Enterprise season 3 was that, but 4 went kind of more traditional. But definitely all the modern stuff was. So, is there any Star Trek in Thaxie's future?
There's a chance, but my life continues to be a complete mess. I'm going to be moving across the country and then back across the country, and then I'll be moving all this stuff between apartments several states apart. And my summer's looking pretty busy, but if I can find the downtime to watch something, maybe I'll ask you for some recommendations, Shane.
or the uptime when you're in the air.
No, I'll be driving.
Oh, you're driving. Okay. Well,
yeah, I'm gonna.
Then movie watching's not recommended.
I would need a car for the things that I am traveling across the country to do.
Okay.
All right. Let's do some achievements then. Starting off, we have Atmahua with 120 defense on May 4th. Jam Andy 52 got 120 ranged also on May 4th. Our ship got 120 agility on the 3rd. Donna got 99 construction on May 2nd.
Duke Juker got 120 Herblore on May 1st. Ezel got 200 million magic experience on May 1st. Donna got 99 Herblore on April 30th. Jamandit 52 got 120 divination on April 30th. And Lotsa got 99 strength on April 30th.
All right,
Nicely
and then
done.
we, yeah, it's very good. Then we have Queen Adina with 99 Dungeoneering on the 30th and 99 Firemaking. We also have Jacker with 120 Firemaking on the 29th. And we have Lord Deluxe with 99 Runecrafting on the 27th.
Nicely done, everybody.
Woo!
Nicely done.
Congratulations! Woo!
All right. What have you been up to on RS Tannis?
Well, I've done a little experimenting with the new arrows.
Eggsperimenting?
Yeah, skilling methods. And when I'm not doing that, I'm still beating a hammer and making plate bodies.
Amen.
Good with double XP coming up. Good moneymaker.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just crazy at like the rate. I don't know. I thought I would go through them a lot faster, but dude, I'm still at 42K.
Wait. Did they actually put out an announcement about that? Or did they just say it on stream a couple
They
of times?
just said it on stream last
The date
week.
exists, but they haven't put a post out.
No, they haven't put
yet.
a post out yet, but it's definitely starting on the 20th.
I mean, yeah, of course. The day is set. Interesting. They haven't made an announcement yet officially.
No.
Well, heads up to any of our listeners who haven't heard, these are DXP coming.
Mhm.
Oh, Baxi.
I've been really enjoying. So I did spend a lot of time this week testing out the arrows. I spent a lot of time standing in front of a dummy with a stack of arrows and just figuring out, making sure that they did work as I expected them to. Which thankfully, everything's pretty consistent with how they've used ammo in the past. And I've spent a ton of time. My alt has farmed like. We're not breaking any records here, but 30,000, 40,000 of the fungal shafts because she doesn't have enough firemaking level yet to go segregate the eggs. So I've been doing a lot of that, and then of course I got her through endgame or not endgame. Wow, wrong end of arc. I got her through extinction, and have had the alt and the main. Going through all of the stuff on Aya. No Necklace of Salamency for me, but powering through all of that XP. So that's it. That's been the deal.
Yep. Same for me this week. 100% mucking around with the arrows and all the experimentation and hairstyling and segregation and whatnot. It's filled the week up, and I can see myself spending a good amount of time there going forward. So. Once again, an update that was well done.
Woo!
So, that's it for this week's episode of Update, folks. Thanks, everybody, for being here. If you want to get the podcast, best way to do that is to subscribe. It'll be delivered automatically to you. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Amazon, Stitcher. Of course, YouTube as well at youtube.com/RSBANDB. You can find the micro lessons and nibbles there, amongst other things. Give us a like and subscribe. Definitely helps the channel out. And with that being said, we'll be back next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. Take care, everyone. See you then.
See ya.
Bye. Ciao.